Hey friends, if you want to watch super hit movie, all action, all the time in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Friends, in today's video, the movie we're going to talk about is called All Action. All the time, we will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it. All the interesting facts about this movie. In today's video, I'm going to tell you, I'm also going to give you all the information on which H platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, box office, collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film, storyline, star cast, actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end. So let's start. One of Hollywood's oldest axioms teaches us, the story comes first. Watching Terminator Salvation, it occurred to me that in the new Hollywood, the storyboard comes first. After scrutinizing the film, I offer you my summary of the story. Guy dies, finds himself resurrected, meets others, fights. That lasts for almost 2 hours. The action scenes, which is to say 90% of the movie, involve Armageddon between men and machines 10 years in the future. The film's most cheerful element is that they've perfected artificial intelligence so quickly. Yes, Skynet is self-aware and determines to wipe out humankind for reasons it doesn't explain. A last-ditch resistance is being led by John Connor, or JC for you Faulkner fans. Christian Bale plays the role of Connor in a movie that raises many questions about the lines between man and machine, raises them and then leaves them levitating. However, it has many fights between a humanoid cyborg and robotic Skynet men made of steel. How do these antagonists fight? Why with their fists, of course, which remains a wonderfully cinematic device. They also shoot at each other, to little effect. In fact, one metal man is covered in molten ore and then flash frozen and keeps on ticking. And listen, Skynet buddies, what Bale thought about that cameraman is only the tip of the iceberg compared to what he thinks about you. There is nothing visible in this world but a barren wasteland. No towns, no houses, no food, no farms, no nothing. Maybe they live on spam. The resistance is run from a submarine commanded by Jenner Ashdown, Michael Ironside, who wants to destroy Skynet and all of its human POWs. Connor, who is not even human, vows to save them. Wait, that's Marcus Wright, Sam Worthington, the guy from the past, who looks so much like Connor that maybe he only thinks he's right. Marcus is a convicted murderer from the past, awakened from cryogenic sleep. I know with a certainty approaching dread that all of my questions will be explained to me in long, detailed messages from Terminator experts. They also will charge me with not seeing the movie before I reviewed it. Believe me, I would have enjoyed traveling forward through time for 2 hours, starting just before I saw the movie. But in regard to the answers to my questions, you know what? I don't care. The first Terminator movie I regret, I suppose, I did not see. Terminator 2 Judgment Day 1991 was a fairly terrific movie set in the then future to prevent the nuclear holocaust of 1997. You remember that. It was about something. In it, Edward Furlong was infinitely more human as John Connor than Christian Bale is in this film. Schwarzenegger indeed reappears in this fourth film thanks to a body double and a special effects face, which makes him, I think, a cyborg of a cyborg. His famous line, "I'll be back," is uttered by one John Connor or another, and I hope it draws more chuckles than it did at the screening I attended. Why, those immortal words are chiseled into granite, or at least into the lobby floor at the AMC River East theaters. If there is one wholly sympathetic character, that would be Blair Williams, played by the fragrant Moon Bloodgood. She murmurs some tender words at the 45-minute mark, representing the most complex dialogue up to that point. Dr. Serena Kogan, Helena Bonham Carter, has a longer speech, but you can't be sure it's really her, and she may have been lying. Anyway, most of the running time is occupied by action sequences, chase sequences, motorcycle sequences, plow truck sequences, helicopter sequences, fighter plane sequences, towering android sequences, and fist fights. It gives you all the pleasure of a video game without the bother of having to play it. Terminator Salvation is a 2009 American military science fiction action film that is the fourth installment of the Terminator franchise, serving as a sequel to Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines 2003. It is directed by McG and written by John Brancato and Michael Ferris. It is the only Terminator film to date not to feature Arnold Schwarzenegger, though his likeness briefly appears digitally. Instead, it stars Christian Bale and Sam Worthington with Anton Yelchin, Moon Bloodgood, Bryce Dallas Howard, Common, Michael Ironside, and Helena Bonham Carter in supporting roles. In a departure from the previous installments, Salvation is a post-apocalyptic film set in the year 2018. It focuses on the war between Skynet's machine network and humanity, as the remnants of the world's militaries have united to form the resistance to fight against Skynet. Bale portrays John Connor, a resistance fighter and central character, while Worthington portrays cyborg Marcus Wright. Yelchin plays a young Kyle Reese, a character first introduced in The Terminator 1984, and the film depicts the origins of the T-800 Terminator. After troubled pre-production, with the Halcyon company acquiring the rights from Andrew G. Vajna and Mario Casar, and with several writers working on the screenplay, filming began in May 2008 in New Mexico and ran for 77 days. Terminator Salvation was released on May 21, 2009 by Warner Bros. Pictures in the United States and by Sony Pictures, releasing under its Columbia Pictures label internationally, and grossed over $371.4 million worldwide, but received mixed to negative reviews. While originally intended to be the first installment of a second Terminator trilogy, these plans were canceled following the Halcyon company filing for bankruptcy after the film's release. The franchise rights were sold in 2012 to Annapurna Pictures, resulting in Terminator Genesis, a reboot of the series, being released in 2015, with Schwarzenegger reprising his role. Plot: in 2003, Dr. Serena Kogan of Cyberdyne Systems convinces death row inmate Marcus Wright to sign over his body for medical research following his execution. Sometime later, the automated Skynet system is activated, becomes self-aware, and perceives humans as a threat to its existence, starting a nuclear holocaust known as Judgment Day. In 2018, John Connor leads an attack on a Skynet base where he discovers schematics of human prisoners being incorporated as living tissue for a new Terminator, the T-800. John survives a nuclear explosion on the base and proceeds to extraction. Following John's departure, Marcus emerges from the base's wreckage and begins heading toward Los Angeles. John heads to the Resistance headquarters aboard a Los Angeles-class submarine and confronts General Ashdown. He reveals that the Resistance have discovered a hidden signal that they believe can shut down Skynet's machines, and plans to launch an offensive against Skynet's headquarters in San Francisco in 4 days due to an intercepted kill list created by Skynet, which will eliminate the Resistance's leaders within the same time frame. John learns that he is on this list, including Kyle Reese. John realizes that Skynet has learned that Kyle will eventually travel back in time and become his father. Arriving at Los Angeles, Marcus encounters Kyle and a mute child named Star during a skirmish with Skynet's machines. Kyle and Star are subsequently abducted and taken prisoner by Skynet. 2 Resistance A-10 airplanes are shot down while trying to intercept a machine transport. Marcus rescues downed pilot Blair Williams, and they make their way to John's base, where Marcus is wounded by a magnetic landmine. Attempting to save his life, the Resistance discover that Marcus is a cyborg, with a cybernetic endoskeleton and a partially artificial cerebral cortex. Although Marcus insists that he is human, John and his wife Kate suspect that Marcus has been sent to kill them, and John orders him to be executed. Blair helps Marcus escape. During the pursuit, Marcus saves John's life from Skynet's Hydrobots, and the two make a bargain. Marcus will enter Skynet's headquarters in San Francisco to help John rescue Kyle and the other prisoners if he lets him live. John pleads with Ashdown to delay the offensive so he can formulate a plan to extract the human captives, but Ashdown refuses and relieves John of his command. However, the Resistance disobeys Ashdown's orders and instead awaits John's signal. Marcus enters the base, interfaces with the computer, and disables perimeter defenses so that John can infiltrate and release the prisoners. Marcus learns from Skynet that he was resurrected to lure John to the base. When the Resistance launches its attack, John will be killed, achieving Skynet's goal. The hidden signal that the Resistance received earlier is revealed to be a ruse, and Skynet uses it to track down and destroy the Resistance command submarine. Refusing to accept his fate, Marcus tears out the hardware linking him to Skynet and leaves to aid John. John locates Kyle and Star, but they are ambushed by a T-800 Terminator. As Kyle and Star escape, Marcus appears and fights the T-800, while John rigs together nuclear fuel cells to destroy the facility. Marcus is outmatched and temporarily disabled until John comes to his aid, after which John is stabbed through the chest by the T-800. Marcus destroys the T-800 by tearing its head off, and he, John, Kyle, and Star are airlifted out. John detonates the explosives, destroying the entire base. John's injury is fatal as his heart was damaged, so Marcus offers his heart for transplantation, sacrificing himself to save John. As he recovers, John radios to the Resistance that, although this battle has been won, the war continues. Cast: see also List of Terminator characters. Christian Bale as John Connor. Director Mech deemed Bale the most credible action star in the world during development. Mech wanted Bale for Marcus, but the actor, even though he can't really remember why, wanted to play John, and that led to the character's role getting expanded in rewrites of the script. Bale was the first person to be cast and signed on for the role in November 2007. McG talked extensively with Bale in the UK about the role while the latter was filming The Dark Knight, and they both agreed to proceed. Although a fan of the Terminator series, he was at first uninterested until McG convinced him the story would be character-based and not rely on special effects. They kept working on the story every day along with Worthington. Mech said Bale broke his hand punching a Terminator prop during filming. Bale spent 6 to 8 hours each day with McG in the editing room to advise the finished product. In January 2018, Bale revealed he rejected the role 3 times before accepting it, in part to spite those who told him not to take the role. Sam Worthington as Marcus Wright, a human Terminator hybrid experiment. Worthington compared Marcus to Dorothy, the Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and Alice, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, due to being this person waking up in another world who then tries to find himself. Terminator creator James Cameron personally recommended Worthington, whom he directed in Avatar, to McG. Russell Crowe also recommended him to McG. The director decided Worthington looked tougher than the great many of today's wafy young male actors. Worthington recalled Cameron told him, "The Terminator to make is the one with the war." Worthington tore his intercostal muscles during the first weeks of filming, but nevertheless insisted on performing his own stunts. McG once expressed interest in casting Christian Bale, Daniel Day-Lewis, or Josh Brolin in the part. Brolin did talk to Bale and read a draft of the screenplay, which he found interesting and dark. Ultimately, though, I didn't think it felt right. Anton Yelchin as Kyle Reese, a teenage refugee and admirer of John Connor and the Resistance. As portrayed by Michael Biehn in The Terminator, he was sent back in time to 1984 to protect Sarah Connor to ensure the survival of the human race, and fathered John with her. Yelchin said he wanted to portray Kyle as Biehn did, and not make him appear weaker because it was a younger version of the character. The difference in his portrayal lies in showing Kyle as intense, but not concentrated until he joins the Resistance proper. Yelchin tried to convey Kyle's intensity by focusing on how fast Biehn appeared when running in the original film. Moon Bloodgood as Blair Williams, a no-nonsense and battle-hardened pilot of the Resistance who suffers from survivor's guilt and serves as a romantic interest for Marcus. McG characterizes her as continuing the feminine strength that has been prominent throughout the franchise. Bryce Dallas Howard as Kate Connor, the wife of John Connor and daughter of Robert Brewster, who supervised the development of Skynet. Charlotte Gainsbourg was originally set to play the part, but left due to scheduling conflicts with another film. As portrayed by Claire Danes in the third film, Kate was a veterinarian, but in this film she is now a physician. Howard suggested, as part of the character's backstory, that Kate studied medical books and interviewed many surviving doctors after the events of Judgment Day. The film's subject matter reminded her of developing countries, devastated by war, and lacking basic supplies such as clean water, which reflects things that are going on currently in this privileged world that we are living in, where there hasn't been an apocalypse and robots haven't taken over the world. I think that's something definitely for us to reinvestigate, and that we continue to make choices for our own future to take that into consideration. Howard focused on Kate being accustomed to fear and loss, because the character was a military brat, common as Barnes, John's right-hand man. Common stated the character was not overly developed, being only just a badass character, really the big heavy of the movie, before McGee's intervention. Common agreed with this, as I didn't want to just be the big bulky guy there, and worked on the emotional side, thinking about how it would be in a world that's post-apocalyptic, a world where, things have been destroyed and we're really fighting for survival. Jane Alexander as Virginia, the leader of a group of human refugees. Helena Bonham Carter as Dr. Serena Kogan, Skynet, an ex-Cyberdyne scientist who convinces Marcus to donate his body for her research. Her face is later used by the Skynet computer to communicate with Marcus. Tilda Swinton was originally considered for the part, but Bonham Carter replaced her before filming. She accepted the part because her then domestic partner, Tim Burton, was a Terminator fan. Her role was a small but pivotal one and would only require 10 days of shooting. However, on July 20, 2008, Bonham Carter delayed filming by a day and was given an indefinite leave due to the death of 4 of her family members in a minibus accident in South Africa. Michael Ironside as General Ashdown, the leader of the Resistance. Ivan Javera as General Losenko, a member of the Resistance. Roland Kickinger as T-800, the first Terminator covered in living tissue. Bodybuilder and actor Kickinger, who previously portrayed Schwarzenegger in the 2005 biographical film See Arnold Run, was his physical double on set. When asked about his role, Kickinger said it is Arnold's character in the first Terminator. That's basically my role, but 20 years before, so it establishes how the Terminator came about. Polish strongman athlete Mariusz Pudzianowski was also considered for doubling Schwarzenegger. If Schwarzenegger had decided not to lend his appearance to the film, then John would have shot the T-800's face off before the audience got a good look at him. Arnold Schwarzenegger's facial likeness was recreated with CGI, with a mold of his face made in 1984 scanned to create the digital makeup. Schwarzenegger gave his consent to appear this way due to being unavailable because he was serving as governor of California. Jada Grace Berry as Star, an 8-year-old girl in Kyle's care. Born after Judgment Day, Star is mute due to the trauma of the post-apocalyptic world. Therefore, this has given her the unnatural ability to sense when a Skynet unit is approaching. Brian Steele as the T-600. Linda Hamilton as the voice of Sarah Connor, John's mother, who died years ago of leukemia. In 2 scenes of the film, John plays Sarah's recorded cassette tapes for more information regarding Kyle Reese, Marcus Wright, and Skynet's Terminators. Hamilton was uncredited for the role and was the only actor from previous films to return. Production. Development. In 1999, 2 years after C2 Pictures purchased the rights, 2 Terminator films' premises were mapped out and were supposed to be developed simultaneously. Teddy Sarafian was hired to write Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines, which he eventually received shared story credit for, while David C. Wilson was to write Terminator 4. Before any revisions were done, T3 initially took place in 2001 and revolved around the first attacks between Skynet and humans. T4 would follow immediately afterward and centered primarily on the war briefly seen in the first 2 films. Warner Bros. Gave the film the codename Project Angel. Following the release of Terminator 3 in 2003, producers Andrew G. Vajna and Mario Kassar contracted Nick Stahl and Claire Danes to return as John Connor and Kate Brewster in another film. Director Jonathan Mostow helped develop the script, written by John Brancato and Michael Ferris, and was set to begin production in 2005 after completing another film. It was known by then that Arnold Schwarzenegger's role would be limited. as he had assumed office as governor of California. The producers sought to have Warner Bros. Finance the picture as they did for Terminator 3. In 2005, Stahl said John and Kate would be recast as the story jumped forward in time. By 2006, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, a successor to Orion Pictures and current owners of the Hemdale Film Corporation Library, distributor and producer of the original film, respectively, was set to distribute the fourth film as part of the new CEO Harry Sloan's scheme to make the studio a viable Hollywood player. On May 9, 2007, it was announced that production rights to the Terminator series had passed from the feuding Vagina and Kassar to the Halcyon company. The producers hoped to start a new trilogy. The purchase was financed with a loan by Pacificor, a hedge fund from Santa Monica. By July 19th, the project was in legal limbo due to a lawsuit between MGM and Halcyon subsidiary T-Asset. MGM had an exclusive window of 30 days to negotiate for distribution of the Terminator films. When negotiating for Terminator 4, Halcyon rejected their initial proposal and MGM suspended negotiations. After the 30 days were over, MGM claimed that the period during which negotiations were suspended did not count and their exclusive period was still open. Halcyon asked a court for an injunction, allowing them to approach other distributors. Later, the lawsuit was settled and MGM got a 30-day right of first refusal to finance and distribute the fifth Terminator film. Finally, Warner Bros. Paid $60 million to acquire the United States distribution rights of Terminator Salvation. Sony Pictures also paid just over $100 million to acquire the film's distribution rights in all international territories, excluding South Korea, Japan, and the Middle East, where it was respectively distributed by Lotte Entertainment and Mars Entertainment, Toho Tawa, and Gulf Film. Writing: Mick signed on to direct, as the first two films were among his favorites, and he had even cast Robert Patrick, who played the T-1000, in his previous films. Though he was initially unsure about flogging a dead horse, he felt the post-apocalyptic setting allowed the film to be different enough so as not to be just an inferior sequel. The idea that events in Terminator 2, Judgment Day, and Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines altered the future allowed them to be flexible with their presentation of the futuristic world. McG met with the series' co-creator James Cameron, and, although he neither blessed nor denigrated the project, Cameron told the new director he had faced a similar challenge when following Ridley Scott's Alien with Aliens. He maintained two elements of the previous films: that John is an outsider to the authorities and someone of future importance is being protected, and in this film, it is Kyle Reese. The first full screenplay for the film was written by Terminator 3 writers John Brancato and Michael Ferris, who received full screenplay credit. Paul Haggis rewrote Brancato and Ferris's script, and Sean Ryan made another revision 3 weeks before filming 52. Jonathan Nolan also wrote on set, which led to McG to say, "I would have to characterize Jonah as the lead writer of the film." In response to whether or not Nolan would receive a writing credit for his contribution, McG went on to say, "I don't know how the WGA rules work, but honest to goodness, we did the heaviest lifting with Jonah." Nolan contributed to the film after Bale signed on and created Connor's arc of becoming a leader. Unfortunately, according to its main actor Christian Bale, due to the 2007-08 Writers Guild of America strike, Nolan had to abruptly leave the project due to another commitment. Anthony E. Zuiker contributed to the script as well. So extensive were the rewrites that Alan Dean Foster decided to rewrite the entire novelization after submitting it to his publisher because the compiled shooting script was very different from the one he was given beforehand. In the early script drafts, John was a secondary character. Producer James Middleton explained, "Ben-Hur was influenced by Jesus Christ, but it was his story. Much in that way, this new main character will be influenced by John Connor." The original ending was to have John killed and his image kept alive by the Resistance by grafting his skin onto Marcus's cybernetic body. Marcus would have then murdered Kate, Barnes, Kyle, and Starr. However, after the ending was leaked on the internet, Warner Bros. Decided to completely change the entire third act of the film. McG and Nolan did continue the Christ element of John's character, though, in which he has some followers who believe what he knows about Skynet and others who do not. McGee described the film's theme as where you draw the line between machines and humans. The friendship between Marcus, who was executed for murder when humanity still ruled the world, and Kyle Reese illustrates how war and suffering can bring out the best in people, such as when they work together to survive during the Blitz. The title was derived from this second chance given to humanity and to Marcus, in addition to John's efforts to save humanity from the machines. The film's original title was Terminator Salvation: The Future Begins, but this was dropped during filming. Throughout writing, the cast and crew would watch scenes from the three films to pick moments to reference or tribute, including Come With Me If You Want to Live and I'll Be Back, which is uttered by John in this film. McGee found himself having to decide which ideas for references would be included and which would not. An opening scene has John fighting a Terminator on a crashed helicopter, which was storyboarded as an homage to the climax of the original film, where his mother Sarah, having broken her leg, is chased by a crippled Terminator. McGee did this to reflect the skills John learned from her. Filming. With an estimated $200 million budget, Terminator Salvation is the most expensive Terminator film to date, followed closely by Terminator Dark Fate, 2019. Estimated budget $185 to $196 million. The shooting of the film started on May 5, 2008 in New Mexico, with parts of the filming taking place at Kirtland Air Force Base after the United States Air Force agreed to provide the crew guidance and aircraft. The filmmakers had originally intended to begin filming on March 15th in Budapest or Australia, but a 25% tax rebate and absence of an interest rate cap and floor made the filmmakers seek the cheaper New Mexico because of their elevated budget. To avoid delays caused by a possible 2008 Screen Actors Guild strike in July, all exterior scenes were completed by then, so production could restart easily. The shoot ended on July 20th, 2008, though some pickups took place in January 2009. In addition to Bale breaking his hand and Worthington hurting his back, special effects technician Mike Menardis almost lost his leg filming an explosion. The sequence required a manhole cover being blown into the air, which hit Menardis and partially severed his leg. McGee noted it was a testament to the gritty style of the film. I say with respect, I didn't want that Star Wars experience of everything's a blue screen, tennis balls, and go for it. I had Stan Winston build all the machines. We built all the sets, the explosive power, so you feel that wind and that percussion and that heat blowing your eyebrows off. And with that, you get a couple bumps and bruises on the way, but you get it in an integrity and a realism that hopefully echoes Apocalypse Now. You couldn't say, let's just shoot Apocalypse Now in Burbank. I think it's going to feel just as good. The film used Technicolor's Oz process during post-production. This is a partial silver retention on the interpositive, similar to bleach bypass, which will be used to lend to the sense of detachment from the modern world McGee was looking for. Industrial Light and Magic developed shader programs to make the desaturated lighting of the CGI realistic and well integrated to the on-set footage. The filmmakers consulted with many scientists about the effects of an abandoned world and nuclear winter. McGee cited Mad Max 2, the original Star Wars trilogy, and Children of Men, as well as the novel The Road, as his visual influences. He instructed his cast to read the latter, as well as Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Like Children of Men, McGee would storyboard scenes so that it would be edited together to resemble a seamless, continuous shot. It took 2 weeks to film a 2-minute shot of Connor getting caught up in a bombing on the Skynet base, where he discovers plans for the T-800. Design and special effects. McGee sought to create as many in-camera elements as possible to make the film more realistic. Full citation needed. Many of the settings were hand-built, including an entire gas station for the harvester attack scenes. The Terminator factory was built in an abandoned factory, better source needed, and the design crew consulted robot manufacturer companies for a more realistic depiction, full citation needed. A 20-foot-tall, 6.1 meters model built and detonated by Kerner Optical was used for the explosion of Skynet's 30-story San Francisco-based lab. The majority of the machines were designed by Martin Lang, a crew member on Cameron's Titanic and Ghosts of the Abyss. McGee described many of the machines as having an H.R. Geiger influence. Meg's intent was to create a gritty, tactile 2018 on screen, and Lang concurred the robots would have to be black and degraded as none of them are new. Lang devised aerostats, which are smaller versions of the aerial hunter-killers from the previous films. The aerostats send a signal to the 60-foot-tall, 18 meters humanoid harvesters. They are very big and slow, so they use moto-terminators to capture humans, and the harvesters place them in transporters. Lang was unsure of how to design the transporters until he saw a cattle transport while driving through Albuquerque. The film features the first aquatic Skynet robot, the Hydrobot, which Lang modeled on eels, and was built by the animatronics crew with its exterior made of metal-looking rubber, so it could be used in the aquatic scenes. The film features rubber-skinned T-600 robots. McGee interpreted Kyle Reese's description in the original film of the T-600 as being easy to spot by making them tall and bulky. For scenes of humans fighting with Terminators, the actors interacted with stuntmen wearing motion capture suits, later replaced by digital robots. Full citation needed. For the Moto Terminators, Ducati designers were hired to create the robots, and the on-screen robot was a combination of stuntmen driving actual Ducatis and a Moto Terminator mock-up, as well as a digital Moto Terminator. Visual effects studio Imaginary Forces created the Terminator point-of-view sequences and tried to depict a simple interface, free of the frills, anything that a machine would not purely need. And with more software bugs and anomalies, since the robots of Salvation were not as advanced as the Terminators from the previous films. The main special effects were done by Industrial Light and Magic. Salvation was one of the last films that Stan Winston, the visual effects supervisor on the first 3 films, worked on. Winston died on June 15, 2008, after a long struggle with multiple myeloma. McGee dedicated the film to him in the end credits. John Rosengrant and Charlie Gibson replaced Winston, and McGee commented that they are trying to achieve something that's never been done before, and push the envelope. Asylum Visual Effects created digital plates, Marcus's endoskeleton, and a digital T-600. Rising Sun Pictures did the digital correction of day for night scenes, the destruction of the submarine and Marcus's robot hand. Music Danny Elfman began composing the score in January 2009. Elfman's score had a different theme, but it did feature the 5-note percussive sequence that had been featured in every Terminator film. Originally, Mick wanted to hire Gustavo Santaolalla to work on the music for the human characters, while having either Tom York or Johnny Greenwood compose Skynet's themes. McGee had met with the original Terminator composer Brad Fiedel, but decided he did not want a repeat of the original score in his film. Mick wanted Elfman's themes and ambient sounds to have a Wagnerian quality. Reprise Records released the 15-track soundtrack on May 19, 2009. While Common had expressed interest in writing a song for the soundtrack, Alice in Chains' Rooster is the only featured song. Although not included in the soundtrack, You Could Be Mine by Guns N' Roses, which was featured in Terminator 2 Judgment Day, can be heard briefly in a scene of the film as well. All music is composed by Danny Elfman except Rooster. Marketing. Promotion. On July 16, 2008, Warner Brothers debuted the film's teaser trailer on Yahoo, accompanied by a voiceover by Christian Bale's character of John Connor. On November 25, 2008, Sony Pictures unveiled a motion poster showing a T-800 with the words, "Welcome to Los Angeles 2018. In December 2008, the first theatrical trailer was released on the Apple website. In March 2009, the second trailer was released on Yahoo Movies and was attached to Watchmen, accompanied by a remix version of 9 Inch Nails' The Day the World Went Away. On May 8, 2009, the extended 4-minute final trailer was released on Apple. Tie-ins. In addition to the novelization by Alan Dean Foster, a prequel novel titled Terminator Salvation, From the Ashes by Timothy Zahn was released. 2 further books were inspired by the film Cold War by Greg Cox and Trial by Fire, again by Zahn. IDW Publishing released a 4-issue prequel comic, as well as an adaptation. It follows Connor rallying together the resistance in 2017, as well as examining normal people overcoming their intolerances to defeat Skynet. Dark Horse Comics released a 12-issue sequel comic to the film titled Terminator Salvation: The Final Battle by J. Michael Straczynski from 2013 to 2014. Playmates Toys, Sideshow Collectibles, Hot Toys, Character Options, and DC Unlimited produced merchandise, while Chrysler, Sony, Pizza Hut, and 7-Eleven were among the product placement partners. On May 23, 2009, a roller coaster named after the film opened at Six Flags Magic Mountain. In 2011, the ride was no longer licensed and renamed as Apocalypse: The Ride. Video game. A third-person shooter video game of the same name was released on the same week of the release of the film. Christian Bale declined to lend his voice, so Gideon Emery voiced the character of John Connor. The game features the voices of Common and Moon Bloodgood as Barnes and Blair Williams, respectively. Despite not appearing in the film, Rose McGowan voiced the character of Angie Salter, an ex-high school teacher. The game is set in 2016, after the events of Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines and before the events of Terminator Salvation. Another video game also titled Terminator Salvation was released in 2010 in arcades. It is a light gun shooter developed by Play Mechanics and published by Raw Thrills. Animated series. On May 18, 2009, Machinima released Terminator Salvation: The Machinima Series, an animated prequel web series set before the 2009 video game, comprising 6 episodes. Set after Judgment Day, Blair Williams, again voiced by Bloodgood, is fighting the war against the machines in downtown Los Angeles while tracking down the computer hacker named Laz Howard, voiced by Cam Clark, and trying to convince him to join sides with the resistance. The series was created using real-time computer animation from the video game. It was distributed by Warner Premiere, produced by Wonderland Sound and Vision and the Halcyon Company, and was released on DVD on November 3, 2009. Release theatrical. The film was released in North America on May 21, 2009, with Warner Bros. Setting the American premiere on May 14, 2009, at the Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood. Elsewhere, Sony Pictures Entertainment released the film in most overseas territories on different dates in June. One exception was Mexico because of the swine flu outbreak in the country, which forced Sony to push the release date to July 31, 2009. It is rated PG-13 by the Motion Picture Association of America for intense sequences of sci-fi violence, action, and language, unlike the first 3 films, which are rated R. The decision to release the film with a PG-13 rating was met with much criticism from fans, as well as the media. The rating decision was made after McG cut out a shot of Marcus stabbing a thug with a screwdriver, as the director felt disallowing the young audience due to that one shot was unfair. He also deleted a topless scene for Moon Bloodgood because it was a soft moment between a man and a woman that was designed to echo the Kelly McGillis-Harrison Ford moment in Witness, but in the end, it felt more like a gratuitous moment of a girl taking her top off in an action picture, and I didn't want that to convolute the story or the characters. In September 2020, McG again mentioned that he had a darker cut of the film that might have worked better. The producers had expected the rating because of the modern leniency toward violence in PG-13 films, such as the 2007 action film Live Free or Die Hard. Home media. The DVD and Blu-ray of the film was released on December 1, 2009. The DVD contains the theatrical cut of the film with a featurette on the Moto Terminators. The Blu-ray features both the theatrical cut and the R-rated director's cut, which is 3 minutes longer, 118 minutes, with bonus material including maximum movie mode, a video commentary in which director McG talks about the film while it plays, featurettes, a video archive, and a digital comic of the first issue of the official film prequel comic. Both versions include a digital copy of the theatrical cut for portable media players. Target Stores was the only retailer to carry the director's cut on DVD. On its first week of retail, Terminator Salvation debuted at the top spot of the Blu-ray charts and second in the DVD charts, behind Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian. The film made $29,811,432 in domestic DVD sales, bringing its total gross to $401,439,971. In 2019, Sony Pictures Home Entertainment released the film on Ultra HD Blu-ray in Europe and Australia. A North American Ultra HD Blu-ray release from Warner Bros. Home Entertainment is scheduled to be released in the near future. Reception. Box office. The film's first nationwide U.S. screenings on Thursday, May 21, 2009, made $3 million from midnight screenings and earned $13.3 million in its first day, and grossed an additional $42,558,398 on its four-day Memorial Day opening weekend from 3,530 theaters. It debuted at number 2 behind Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian, giving it a lower first weekend take than its predecessor, becoming the first film in the series not to open at number 1 and failing to meet Box Office Magazine predictions by 50%. Terminator Salvation was more successful in its international release, opening at number 1 in 66 of 70 territories through the first week of June, and continuing to be the highest-grossing film in the following week. The film's total domestic gross was $125,322,469, along with $246,530,532 from overseas territories, for a worldwide gross of $371,353,001. As of December 2009, the film ranked 14th for the year internationally and 23rd domestically, US and Canada, which put it below initial expectations in terms of domestic gross and first weekend, as well as overall global take. Critical response. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 33% based on 281 reviews, with an average rating of 5.10/10. The website's critics' consensus reads, "With storytelling as robotic as the film's iconic villains, Terminator Salvation offers plenty of great effects but lacks the heart of the original films." On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 49 out of 100, based on 46 reviews, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences surveyed by CinemaScore gave the film a grade B+ on scale of A to F. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 2 out of 4 stars, saying that, "After scrutinizing the film, I offer you my summary of the story. Guy dies, finds himself resurrected, meets others, fights. That lasts for almost 2 hours." Michael Rechtshaffen of The Hollywood Reporter wrote that the film isn't the same without Arnold Schwarzenegger and that it misses its dramatic element. Likewise, Claudia Puig of USA Today gave the film 2 out of 4 stars and called it predictable, with the dramatic elements flatlining. She considered Christian Bale's performance one-dimensional, but found his co-stars to come off better, saying Sam Worthington had a quiet intensity marred only by yelling "no" 3 times in about 10 minutes, and that Anton Yelchin had some of the best lines. Total Films Review gave the film 4 out of 5 stars with its verdict, "The Terminator story recharges with a post-apocalyptic jolt of energy. Frantic and full of welcome ties to the past, it also plows new ground with purpose. Fingers crossed McG will follow Cameron's lead and serve up a worthy sequel." Devin Faraci of Empire also gave a positive rating of 4 out of 5 stars, saying, "McG has sparked a moribund franchise back to life, giving fans the post-apocalyptic action they've been craving since they first saw a metal foot crush a human skull 2 decades ago." However, on Chud, the latter said, "Bale's desire to star as John Connor was probably the most fatal blow to the film. It completely distorted the shape of the story as it existed." Furthermore, he expressed that the third act was when the film began falling apart, saying, "McG and Nolan muddied the end of the picture, delivering action generics, yet another Terminator fight in a factory, while never finding their own hook that would give this movie more of an impact than you would get from an expanded universe novel." In contrast, James Berardinelli considered the ending the best part of the film, feeling that the first 2/3 were rambling and disjointed, and that the lack of a central villain was only fixed when the T-800 appeared. Betsy Sharkey of the Los Angeles Times stated that Bale's strengths do not serve him or the movie as well here, and that when the story starts to crumble around Bale, Worthington is there to pick up the pieces. Craig Sharp of Film Shaft gave the film 3 out of 5 stars, saying, "If you're looking for action, then this is one damn good film. If it's character depth you're after, then move along, please." A.O. Scott of the New York Times said the film has a brute integrity lacking in some of the other seasonal franchise movies, and efficient, reasonably swift storytelling. Ben Lyons and Ben Mankiewicz gave the film a see it and Skip It, respectively, on their show at the movies, with the latter mentioning that it is the worst big-budget summer release I've seen in some time. In Real Power, Hollywood Cinema and American Supremacy, Matthew Alford argued that with the fourth installment, the franchise had made a clear shift towards supporting establishment narratives despite its earlier reservations, and that a central theme is whether John Connor should prioritize striking a decisive military blow against the machines or rescue some captured humans who are entombed with shades of Auschwitz by the Terminators. The flash-forwards from the first 3 Terminator films hinted at a horrible futurescape of pain, deprivation, and ad hoc guerrilla warfare, he writes. But, in contrast, producer Jeffrey Silver explained that the Department of Defense gave fantastic cooperation to Salvation because they recognized that in the future portrayed in this film, the military will still be the men and women who protect us, no matter what may come. Alford concludes that, for a world that is set just 15 years after a global nuclear holocaust, the survivors are fancifully healthy, not to mention hairy, and that this normalizes the unthinkable. Response from Terminator actors: Arnold Schwarzenegger, star of the preceding 3 films in the series, initially remarked that Terminator Salvation was a great film. I was very excited, but later reversed this position and said it was awful. It tried hard, not that they didn't try, the acting and everything. It missed the boat. Terminator series creator James Cameron considered it an interesting film that he didn't hate as much as I thought I was going to, and praised Sam Worthington's performance, but also said he would not return to the franchise. The series has kind of run its course. Frankly, the soup's already been pissed in by other filmmakers. He also felt his 2 films were better than either of the later films. Linda Hamilton, who portrayed Sarah Connor in The Terminator and Terminator 2: Judgment Day, and lent her voice to Terminator Salvation, wished the film all the best, but expressed her opinion that the series was perfect with 2 films. It was a complete circle, and it was enough in itself. But there will always be those who will try to milk the cow. Retrospective appraisal. In 2020, following the critical and commercial failures of the 2 subsequent films, Terminator Genisys and Terminator Dark Fate, MovieWeb reported that Terminator Salvation had developed a strong cult following, and that fans had begun petitioning for MacG's R-rated director's cut to be released. After the still entertaining but undeniably sillier Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines, the Terminator franchise was ready for salvation. But what would be the next step? Arnold was fully engulfed in his political career. James Cameron would rather remake Piranha 2 than return, and per the usual for this franchise, no one even knows who owns the rights. This is what the fuck happened to Terminator Salvation. A bit after Terminator 3's release, both Nick Stahl and Claire Danes were recast to return as John Connor and Kate Brewster in the next installment of the franchise. Jonathan Mostow, director of Terminator 3, was also involved in helping with the script, but a retread of Terminator 3 sounded dreadful. On top of that, the rights situation was once again a mess. After months of fighting, lawsuits, and distribution hassles, the rights to the franchise were again sold, this time to the Halcyon company, who, stop me if you've heard this one, planned to make a new trilogy of films. And so, it was out with the old, in with McG. McG at the time had directed music videos for everyone from Korn to Sugar Ray, as well as both of the first 2 Charlie's Angels films and tear-jerking true story We Are Marshall. All things that scream Terminator, I know. McG would be working with a script that survived the previous regime, penned by Terminator 3 writers John Brancato and Michael Ferris. While these 2 are listed as the sole writers for the project, legend has it the script was actually touched up by a bevy of other talents, including but not limited to Paul Haggis, Crash, $1 Million Baby, Sean Ryan, The Shield, and Christopher Nolan's brother, Jonathan Nolan, The Dark Knight. The latter of which McG himself considered the lead writer of the film because of the constant rewrites he did on set. Nolan joined the project after the casting of Christian Bale and ended up creating most of John Connor's arc. The final script ended up so different from the original that novelization writer Alan Dean Foster had to completely rewrite his book on the film. The original ending of Terminator Salvation featured John Connor being killed, then having his face grafted over the character of Marcus to keep the resistance alive. This, only to have Marcus then murder Kate, Barnes, Kyle, and even Star while donning Connor's trusted image. While the theme song would have gone extra hard as the credits rolled after such a bleak ending, it was a little too dark for some fans when the ending leaked online. And too dark for Warner Bros. As well, who decided it should then be changed. In the story we received, a character named Marcus is on death row pre-Judgment Day and signs his body over to Helena Bonham Carter and science. Fast forward to post-Judgment Day, and he is resurrected, unknowingly a cybernetic organism for Skynet meant to infiltrate the resistance. All the while, we see John Connor on the cusp of becoming the man, the myth, the legend we've heard of, but he doesn't quite have the leadership support yet, so he's fighting two wars at once. He also learns that Skynet has a kill list with both his and his younger father, Kyle Reese's name on it. He tries to find Reese and keep him safe, while also searching for a signal that can stop Skynet for good. In the process, however, he ends up in a trap set by Skynet and an unknowing Marcus. There, Marcus and John team up against a strange-looking version of Arnold's T-800, blowing up the Skynet facility in the process. John is critically injured in his heart during the fight, but Marcus offers his own heart to save John. In doing so, Marcus finally achieves his, wait for it, salvation. We then leave off with John Connor reminding us that the battle has been won, but the war rages on. The character of Marcus was meant to be the lead character in the film, with a Jesus to Ben-Hur type thing going on between him and John's character. But when you cast Christian Bale, fresh off The Dark Knight, and we know this because he still sounded like the Dark Knight throughout the film, you give him a little more screen time. Marcus still carried much of the load, which was given to actor Sam Worthington in his biggest role to date. Ironically, Worthington would star in James Cameron's Avatar that very same year. I think this in itself threw fans off when watching Salvation. Having an all-time actor like Christian Bale in the role of John Connor after the weird choices made with the character in Rise of the Machines was a godsend. It was a strange feeling to not have him be at the forefront for its entirety. This cast was insanely huge, however, and there was only so much screen time to go around. The talented late actor Anton Yelchin was cast as the hopeful and innocent heart of the film in a young Kyle Reese. It's a great bit of casting, and for my money, the best Kyle Reese in the franchise, save for Michael Biehn. One can't help but wonder how amazing it would have been to have Yelchin continue this role at some point later in his career. John Connor's wife was cast as Dallas Bryce Howard in an interesting role, often off to the side of the action, but with a major impact on John's choices. You get the sense the franchise had far bigger plans for her character in the future. The cast also featured everyone from Moon Bloodgood to Common and guy built to be a character in a Terminator movie, Michael Ironside, all as chess pieces in the future war. Special effects-wise, McG spared no expense in keeping the desolate, post-apocalyptic action scenes realistic. For the most part, I would say he succeeded. The action in Salvation is dark and gritty, in a way that brings the franchise back down to its roots from Terminator 3's entertaining but Hollywood atmosphere. Thanks in part to the help of, once again, Industrial Lights and Magic, who darkened their CGI palettes to match the cinematography of a nuclear wasteland. The new technology Salvation brought forth was also inspired and included both giant, awe-inspiring robot at-holes and motorcycle Skynet hybrids worked on by actual Ducati designers. Not to mention the Hydro Terminators, which put to rest any thoughts of just hiding from Skynet in the ocean. Many of the ideas were brought to life by Martin Lang, who had worked with Cameron on Titanic in yet another tie-in with the creator of the franchise. Who was inspired by films such as Mad Max and Children of Men, said it best himself, saying, "I say with respect, I didn't want that Star Wars experience of everything's a blue screen, tennis balls, and go for it. I had Stan Winston build all the machines. We built all the sets. The explosive power so you feel that wind and that percussion and that heat blowing your eyebrows off. And with that, you get a couple bumps and bruises on the way, but you get it in an integrity and a realism that hopefully echoes Apocalypse Now." Terminator Salvation would be one of the last that legend Stan Winston would work on before he sadly passed in 2008. The film was dedicated to him in the credits. From the darkened robots to the painstaking research on the effects of nuclear winter on robotic elements, Salvation is at times a work of special effects art. That realism doesn't come easy, though. In this case, it came to the tune of a $200 million budget, the most they'd ever spent on a film in the franchise. It also almost came at a physical price, with a special effects technician almost losing his leg during a scene when a manhole is exploded into the air. Lucky for him, it was only partially severed, which doesn't sound like a goddamn tea party either. Between injuries and writers' strikes alone, Terminator Salvation was a Herculean effort to accomplish. Most Terminator films are. But Salvation had a special challenge of its own when the film went viral. For all the wrong reasons. While filming an intense scene, the director of photography, Shane Hurlbut, walked into Bale's eyeline for a second time and distracted him. Bale proceeded to go on a minutes-long rant for the ages. The audio of Bale manically screaming at Hurlbut was recorded by someone on the set and leaked to the press. If you were there, you likely remember. It became one of the most talked-about news stories of the year. The audio spread like wildfire. Bale's star had never been higher due to the heater of hits he was in the midst of, and this was a bad look. Everyone everywhere was either making jokes or furious at Bale for treating a coworker with such disrespect. Bale would later admit he had been trying to channel the crazy side of his character's mother, Sarah Connor, and that it went horribly wrong. To his credit, so many coworkers both from the set of Salvation and those who had previously worked with Bale came to his defense. Person after person went on record praising his professionalism and chalked it up to the many stresses of working on a movie set fueled by this level of intensity. Bale also gave radio station KROQ 106.7 a lengthy and heartfelt apology for his behavior on the set that day, taking full responsibility. The marketing train moved on regardless. Terminator Salvation made promos of everything from 7-Eleven tie-ins to its very own ride at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Adjacent content was created at a maximum effort pace with a novelization, multiple video games, comic books, and even an animated series being created around the Salvation storyline. The soundtrack featured Danny Elfman doing Danny Elfman things and Alice in Chains' Rooster, so prominently featured in the movie. Everything was in place for a monster hit at the box office. So how did it do? The $200 million production of Terminator Salvation opened up number 2 at the box office to Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian. It was the first film in the franchise to not open up in first place domestically and came in 50% below major pundit predictions. The film did open up at number 1 overseas and ended up gathering more than $370 million in total. Things weren't great, but they weren't John Carter bad. Critically, Salvation took a beating, not just from the critics themselves, but from franchise alma maters. James Cameron tried to be congenial, but also remarked on not returning because, frankly, the soup's already been pissed in by other filmmakers. Schwarzenegger would later call it awful, not that they didn't try, and Linda Hamilton would remark that there will always be those who try and milk the cow. Hamilton would star in Terminator Dark Fate a few years later. Some will argue that part of what went wrong was the choice to make it the first PG-13 entry in the franchise. McGeeg would argue that he merely took out a screwdriver stabbing and a topless shot of Moon Bloodgood to achieve the rating. Something he thought was a good trade-off for allowing younger fans to experience the film. He later admitted, however, that he has a darker cut he thinks may have worked better. Terminator Salvation may have ended the hopes for a new trilogy and been involved in bankruptcies and franchise rights auctions. More on that in our WTF Happened to Terminator Genesis video. Sure. But today, Terminator Salvation has developed a cult following and overall appreciation that didn't exist before. Perhaps it was that the 2 following sequels failed to resonate as well. Perhaps it was just a classic case of Salvation being ahead of its time. Either way, many Terminator fans you ask these days call Salvation underrated and wrongly judged. How apropos for a film in the Terminator franchise that its future would determine its worth. And that, is what happened to Terminator Salvation. A couple of the previous episodes of What Happened to This Horror Movie can be seen below. To see more, head over to our Joe Blow Horror Originals YouTube channel and subscribe while you're there. With much buzzing, beeping, and whirring, the Terminator franchise comes to an absolute creative standstill, or even goes clankingly into reverse with this fantastically dull fourth episode. Look closely in the battle scenes and you can see one of the red-eye Terminator robots yawning, leaning over to another robot and mouthing the words, "I actually voted for Stavros Flatley." It is set in that post-nuclear future of smoky wreckage, CGI ruination, battered bridges, and buggered buildings, prophesied in James Cameron's original 1984 film. The star is notorious cross-patch Christian Bale playing John Connor, the freedom fighter battling robot machine tyranny. Connor, you will recall, is the resistance hero whom the machines tried to wipe out by sending California's future governor Arnold Schwarzenegger back in time to whack his mom. Connor and his comrades discover what they think is a kryptonite-type weapon, which will win the war, a signal transmitter that appears to immobilize the robots. They certainly need all the help they can get, because Connor has chanced upon evidence that the machines have developed an all-new, human-looking super-duper, so unstoppable it makes previous Terminators look stoppable Terminator. Where, oh where, can this chilling prototype be? Meanwhile, a mysterious warrior hoves into view, insinuating himself into the resistance fighters' ranks. One Marcus Wright, played by the Australian actor Sam Worthington. But as we have already seen this same character in the pre-credit sequence on death row pledging his body to science, it isn't hard to guess his tragically conflicted secret. Inevitably, we are to be reintroduced to that self-defeating concept already rolled out in T2, the nice Terminator, the Terminator we're sort of supposed to be rooting for. Fundamentally, Connor and Wright utterly cancel each other out. All the crash-bang action is entirely uninvolving, looking frankly less exciting than the chase scene at the beginning of Walt Disney's Bolt. There's nothing to compare with the magnificent showdown between Arnie and Linda Hamilton at the end of the first movie. And the only woman on view here is Bryce Dallas Howard, playing Connor's winsomely pregnant partner, who is at all times wringing wet. If the contest was about who can be the dullest, Bale would win hands down. His belligerent, resentful facial expression is that of a stunned ox, or a vexed moose, or a rhino that thinks it's overheard someone calling its mum a slag. All the world has now heard the famous on-set meltdown that Bale had while making this film, weirdly maintaining his American accent while raging at director of photography Shane Hurlbut for messing with the lights while Bale was trying to do a scene. Almost as many will have heard his apology, phoned into an LA radio station, expressing concern that anyone would have thought less of Hurlbut and emphasizing that he is in fact an outstanding professional. Perhaps the tantrum should be released as a bonus feature with the DVD, or perhaps it is rather that the film should be the bonus feature, and Bale's Superstrop the main event. It is certainly more exciting and more deeply felt than anything in the fictional action. The Terminators themselves, once so scary, are now starting to resemble a chorus line of grumpy C-3POs, and despite being notionally formidable warriors, they have an unfortunate eccentricity, which is to prove convenient for the narrative. If you can get close enough to stab them in the back of the neck, they go limp and floppy for a good few minutes. What a very unfortunate design flaw for these Terminators. Why didn't the machines, those implacable foes of humanity, think to stick a metal plate on the back of their necks? And the other thing is, for the third time, he's Beck. The original Terminator comes very briefly out of retirement, digitally created to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger as he was 25 years ago, in his primped, pumped pomp. Oddly, this obviously unreal Arnie doesn't look as excitingly and creepily unreal as the actual real, non-CGI Schwarzenegger did all those years ago. Nothing and no one in this film looks as gloriously mad as he did in 1984, and no one is capable of the droll, subversive hints of humor that helped to make the film and its star such a smash. Famously, Schwarzenegger's later switch from movies to politics was so quick that he was fully installed as governor of California just as the DVD edition of Terminator 3: The Rise of the Machines hit the stores. Well, Now that his career in public office is beginning to tank, who knows if the de facto leader of Hollywood's Austrian-American community won't be back for T5. After all, Sly Stallone returned for another Rocky and another Rambo. Perhaps Arnie will feel the need to stick in the old red contact lenses for another sentimental outing. Review. This review is another take on a film I haven't watched in years, what I used to label as retro reviews. Considering Terminator Salvation was released in 2009, I know I bought the Blu-ray as soon as it came out. I own a Steelbook edition. However, I haven't watched it in at least a decade. I'm a huge fan of the Terminator franchise. The long-running film saga has had its ups and downs and everything in between. The original film The Terminator, created and directed by James Cameron, released in 1984, is a stone-cold science fiction classic. The sequel, Terminator 2: Judgment Day, released in 1991, was a huge summer blockbuster hit. One of the first films to cost over $100 million to produce, the money is definitely up there on the screen for all to see, with amazing early computer-generated effects that still look good to this day. It was more than a decade later that we received the next entry to the franchise, Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines, that took the story in an interesting new direction at its climax, something I give the film a lot of respect for. When Terminator Salvation arrived 6 years later, director McG decided to tell a story that was quite different from the first 3 films, which all revolved around a central theme. A machine built by the artificial intelligence system Skynet is sent to the past in order to kill John Connor. Instead, Terminator Salvation is set in the then future of 2018, where an adult John Connor is leading the resistance against the machines in an apocalyptic North America. The story begins in 2003, where Marcus Wright awaits his time on death row. He is visited by Dr. Serena Kogan of Cyberdyne Systems, who convinces him to sign his body over to medical science. What has he got to lose? Marcus signs the paperwork. As of Terminator lore, the artificial intelligence defense system designed to protect us, Skynet, goes online, becomes aware, and determines the greatest threat is mankind itself. It launches a nuclear attack on the major cities, and the war begins to wipe out humanity. Fast forward several years to 2018, and John Connor is part of an attack team that is infiltrating a Skynet research and development center. He discovers information that Skynet is developing new Terminators that incorporate human tissue. These are the T-800 series of cyborgs that have featured in the previous films, the Arnold Schwarzenegger model, if you will. Connor blows the facility, but Skynet fights back. He is the only survivor of the mission, or so we are led to believe. After the dust has settled, Marcus appears from the ruins of the facility, cleans himself off, and starts walking towards the ruins of Los Angeles. There he will encounter a teenage Kyle Reese. If you're not off fate with Terminator lore, this boy will eventually become John Connor's father. It's a major time-traveling plot point established in the original film. The overall story for Terminator Salvation isn't that bad, to be honest. I did find it very entertaining, although a smidgen too long. As already mentioned, it makes a refreshing change from the killer sent back through time theme from the first 3 films. It's not just the story that deviates from previous films, the look is also very distinct from earlier entries as well. I remember being quite excited to learn that the film was to be set in the future war period of the franchise, a setting that has only had short reveals in the previous films. However, the aesthetic is quite different. In director James Cameron's original films, the future wars are always at night, where humanity fights against the gleaming silver steel creations from Skynet, be it the walking skeletal T-800 Terminators, the flying hunter-killer aircraft, or the lumbering hunter-killer tanks. The color palette is one of blacks, blues, and silver with flashes of purple representing the shots fired from both sides. For McGee's vision of the future, it's a cliché, I know, but everything has more of a Mad Max feel. The apocalyptic future is understandably run down, destroyed, and dirty, and the film has a yellow, gritty feel. The other major change is that of the Terminators themselves. Due to the film's timeline in the franchise, these machines are earlier models of what has come before. I wonder if that's why they have a rougher edge, a little clunkier but still functional. Plus, they're all made in black, which gives these already iconic machines a bit more of an evil shine to them. There are also new Terminator machines created just for this film, and the most memorable of these are dubbed the Moto Terminators, riderless motorbikes with attached weaponry that form part of a large action sequence and is the highlight of the film for me. Also, I really like the sound design, as all of Skynet's war machines have this bassy, electronic noise that I can't adequately describe, but my ears love. Sam Worthington, hot off his role in the original Avatar, was hired to play Marcus. He's a decent leading man, but apart from further Avatar films, where's he gone? He's certainly a fine action star, as Salvation proves, but he was not destined for the big time unless he's flown under my radar. Christian Bale, as John Connor, is another good actor, but it felt a little odd seeing him as the leader of the human resistance. Maybe because I so strongly associate him to Bruce Wayne from the Dark Knight trilogy. It is one of those things I can't quite define. The same could be said for Helena Bonham Carter, not a name you'd normally think of when you hear the words Terminator franchise. She's barely in the film, but it was a surprise to see her name in the opening credits. There's a further welcomed, stronger female presence in the form of two fine actors, Moon Bloodgod and Dallas Bryce Howard. However, the extended edition I watched for this review features a topless shot of Moon, which felt gratuitous and didn't serve the story. The late Anton Yelchin was great as the young Kyle Reese, and it's a shame he was taken at such a young age. It wouldn't be a Terminator film without some kind of appearance from the Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger. However, they approach that aspect a little differently this time around. As the T-800 is a brand new model, he is represented during the film's climactic moments as a CGI representation of 1984 Arnold using CGI. Remember, this was 2009, so while the face is great, it does look a little rubbery. I'm guessing this effect was also quite expensive, as it is not long before the skin is burnt away to reveal the classic silver endoskeleton underneath. An effect that was achieved with the wonderful animatronic creations from Stan Winston's workshop, a special effects genius who had built and worked on all the Terminator films, who sadly passed during Salvation's production. The film is dedicated to him. Terminator Salvation is certainly an entertaining piece of sci-fi cinema. Its production design and aesthetics certainly make it stand out from the other entries in the franchise. However, in my head, it must battle with the other 4 sequels in the franchise over which comes third, because nothing will top the first 2 films. Terminator Salvation revealed an interesting twist to the narratives of the second and third films instead. Skynet used a cyborg to form a close tie with Connor in order to arrange for his death at Skynet headquarters. Another interesting thing about the story is that the aim of Skynet was not to kill John Connor before he could join the Resistance. Instead, the organization seemed determined to kill him after he had become a minor resistance leader. And Skynet not only targeted Connor, but also tried to capture Kyle Ree in order to lure Connor to Skynet and kill Kyle before his future trip back through time. However, I did notice that Skynet had targeted both son and father before the son could become the top leader of the Resistance. And when you think about it, with the character of Marcus Wright, Skynet had damn near pulled a con job on both Connor and in the Resistance. The reason I found this interesting is that Skynet's future dealings with Sarah Connor, John Connor, and Kate Brewster. Connor was never this subtle in the franchise's other films. Another major virtue of Terminator Salvation turned out to be its cast, with the exception of 1 or 2. I have already made my complaints about Common and Jane Alexander, so I will sing the praises of the rest of the cast. Helena Bonham Carter made a brief and memorable appearance as Dr. Serena Kogan, the Cyberdyne scientist, who had convinced Marcus to donate his body following his execution in 2003. I found myself impressed by singer and rapper J. Grace Berry, who portrayed the 9-year-old resistance fighter Star. Found it amazing that a 9-year-old girl with hardly any acting experience managed to give one of the more interesting performances in the movie, and she did it with good old-fashioned screen acting. By using her eyes, expressions, and body language, the late Anton Yelchin proved back in 2009 that was as much of a first-rate performer with a strong screen presence as he was as a child actor in the 2002 miniseries Taken. Actor Michael Biehn had made the role of Kyle Ree memorable in the franchise's first movie in 1984. and Yelchin proved that he could be just as memorable as the adolescent Kyle. Both Bryce Dallas Howard and Moonblood Good portrayed the film's two female leads, Kate Brewster, Connor, wife of John, and Claire Williams, resistance pilot who ends up falling in love with Marcus Wright. Both actresses gave first-rate performances and managed to stand out on their own, despite being in heavily male-dominated film. Howard, who had taken over the role first created by Claire Danes, had a very memorable moment in the film when her character first realized that Marcus was not as human as he had professed to be. The director of the first two Terminator movies, James Cameron, had recommended Australian actor Sam Worthington to director MCG for the pivotal role of Marcus Wright, the death row inmate whose body ended up being used as a prototype by Cyberdyne. Not only did Worthington give a memorable performance, but he also almost ended up stealing the picture. He that effectively portrayed Marcus as a tough and ruthless individual who was haunted by his past, fell in love, and became determined to maintain his individuality despite what Cyberdyne and Skynet had done to him. The reason I had stated that Worthington had almost stolen the film was due to Christian Bale's presence in the film as future resistance leader. John Connor, like he has been in nearly every film he has appeared in, Bale was an intense performer with a strong screen presence. Hell, he was like this nearly 34 years ago in the 1987 film Empire of the Sun. There were scenes in which Bale loudly and clearly expressed Connor's emotions, whether it was anger, fear, or concern. Only a very few actors and actresses can get away with openly expressing their character's emotions without being hammy and consummate actor that he is. Bale happens to be one of them. Frankly, I really do not see the need to compare or choose on who was the better actor, Bale or Worthington. Both gave superb performances, and both performed with each other so well that I found myself wishing they had more scenes together. Other information about this film. This review is another take on a film I haven't watched in years, what I used to label as retro views, considering Terminator Salvation was released in 2009. I know I bought the Blu-ray as soon as it came out. I own a Steelbook edition. However, I haven't watched it in at least a decade. I'm a huge fan of the Terminator franchise. The long-running film saga has had its ups and downs and everything in between. The original film, The Terminator, created and directed by James Cameron, released in 1984, is a stone-cold science fiction classic. This sequel, Terminator 2, Judgment Day, released in 1991, was a huge summer blockbuster hit. One of the first films to cost over $100 million to produce. The money is definitely up there on the screen for all to see, with amazing early computer-generated effects that still look good to this day. It was more than a decade later that we received the next entry to the franchise, Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines, that took the story in an interesting new direction at its climax. Something I give the film a lot of respect for. When Terminator Salvation arrived 6 years later, director MCG decided to tell a story that was quite different from the first three films, which all revolved around a central theme. A machine built by the artificial intelligence system Skynet is sent to the past in order to kill John Connor instead. Terminator Salvation is set in the then future of 2018, where an adult John Connor is leading the resist against the machines in an apocalyptic North America. The story begins in 2003, where Marcus Wright awaits his time on death row. He is visited by Dr. Serena Kogan of Cyberdyne Systems, who convinces him to sign his body over to medical science. What has he got to lose? Marcus signs the paperwork. As of Terminator lore, the artificial intelligence defense system designed to protect us. Skynet goes online, becomes aware, and determines the greatest threat is mankind itself. It launches a nuclear attack on the major cities, and the war begins to wipe out humanity. Fast forward several years to 2018, and John Connor is part of an attack team that is infiltrating a Skynet research and development center. He discovers information that Skynet is developing new Terminators that incorporate human tissue. These are the T-800 series of cyborgs that have featured in the previous films, the Arnold Schwarzenegger model. Connor blows the facility. But Skynet fights back. He is the only survivor of the mission, or so we are led to believe. After the dust has settled, Marcus appears from the ruins of the facility, cleans himself off, and starts walking towards the ruins of Los Angeles. There he will encounter a teenage Kyle Ree. If you're not au fait with Terminator lore, this boy will eventually become John Connor's father. It's a major time-traveling plot point established in the original film. The overall story for Terminator Salvation isn't that bad, to be honest. I did find it very entertaining, although a smidgen too long, as already mentioned. It makes a refreshing change from the killer sent back through time theme from the first 3 films. It's not just the story that deviates from previous films, the look is also very distinct from earlier entries as well. I remember being quite excited to learn that the film was to be set in the future war period of the franchise, a setting that has only had short reveals in the previous films. However, the aesthetic is quite different. In director James Cameron's original films, The Future, wars are always at night where humanity fights against the gleaming silver steel creations from Skynet, be it the walking skeletal T-800, Terminators, the flying hunter-killer aircraft, or the lumbering hunter-killer tanks. The color palette is one of blacks, blues, and silver, with flashes of purple representing the shots fired from both sides. For MSKG's vision of the future, it's a cliché, I know, but everything has more of a Mad Max feel. The apocalyptic future is understandably run down, destroyed, and dirty, and the film has a yellow, gritty feel. The other major change is that of the Terminators themselves. Due to the film's timeline in the franchise, these machines are earlier models of what has come before. I wonder if that's why they have a rougher edge, a little clunkier, but still functional. Plus, they're all made in black, which gives these already iconic machines a bit more of an evil shine to them. There are also new Terminator machines created just for this film, and the most memorable of these are dubbed the Moto Terminators, riderless motorbikes with attached weaponry that form part of a large action sequence and is the highlight of the film for me also. I really like the sound design, as all of Skynet's war machines have this bossy electronic noise that I can't adequately describe, but my ears love Sam Worthington hot off. His role in the original Avatar was hired to play Marcus. He's a decent leading man, but apart from further Avatar films, where's he gone? He's certainly a fine action star, as Salvation proves, but he was not destined for the big time, unless he's flown under my radar. Christian Bale as John Connor is another good actor, but it felt a little odd seeing him as the leader of the human resistance. Maybe because I so strongly associate him to Bruce Wayne from the Dark Knight trilogy. It is one of those things I can't quite define. The same could be said for Helena Bonham Carter. Not a name you'd normally think of when you hear the words Terminator franchise. She's barely in the film, but it was a surprise to see her name in the opening credits. There's a further, welcome stronger female presence in the form of 2 fine actors, Moon Blood God and Dallas Bryce Howard. However, the extended edition I watched for this review features a topless shot of Moon, which felt gratuitous and didn't serve the story. The late Anton Yelchin was great as the young Kyle Ree, and it's a shame. He was taken at such a young age. It wouldn't be a Terminator film without some kind of appearance from the Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger. However, they approached that aspect a little differently this time around, as the T-800 is a brand new model. He is represented during the film's climactic moments as a CGI representation of 1984 Arnold. Using CGI, remember this was 2009? So while the face is great, it does look a little rubbery. I'm guessing this effect was also quite expensive, as it is not long before the skin is burnt away to reveal the classic silver endoskeleton underneath, an effect that was achieved with the wonderful animatronic creations from Stan Winston's workshop, a special effects genius who had built and worked on all the Terminator films, who sadly passed during Salvation's production. The film is dedicated to him. Terminator. Salvation is certainly an entertaining piece of sci-fi cinema. Its production, design, and aesthetics certainly make it stand out from the other entries in the franchise. However, in my head, it must battle with the other 4 sequels in the franchise over which comes third, because nothing will top the first 2 films unless you've been living in a cave. You already know that Christian Bale, long recognized as one of this generation's top young actors, had a meltdown on the set of Terminator Salvation when the film's director of photography stepped in the wrong place and ruined the actor's concentration. The widely distributed audio tape proved the talented young man to be a rather pretentious-ass MCG, the film's director took ownership of the whole thing by stating that he'd intentionally heighten the emotions on set that day. Oh, and MCG also pointed out that the two were fast friends who were fine by day, and Terminator Salvation's by far the worst of the 4 Terminator films, and rather surprisingly, much of the blame can be placed upon Bale's terminally serious, dry plotting, and occasionally laughable performance in taking over the role of John Connor Terminator Salvation. Actually kicks off with the film's only decent performance, that of Sam Worthington Rogue, as an executed convict, brought back to life in the film's present date of 2018. With some sort of redemption set to occur, Worthington provides Terminator Salvation the film's only true life, given Bale's jarringly emotionless performance as the film's alleged hero. Bale is widely known as a method actor who will stay in character for entire shoots in order to serve up a convincing performance. All I can say is this must have been one humorless, disconnected set. Of course, this is the director, MCG. We're talking about you. No, MCG, he's the director who brought us the Charlie's Angels films, and we are Marshall. In other words, any potential life in the film is sucked out by Bale's soulless performance and McGee's unimaginative, predictable direction. The essential back-and-forth storyline of Terminator Salvation involves Connor going back in time to protect the teenaged Kyle Ree, Anton Yelchin Star Trek, who will, if he survives Sire Connor, and, well, who really cares? Throughout Terminator Salvation, I found myself laughing aloud at the ridiculous storylines, absurd dialogue, uncomfortable romance between our ex-convict and a female soldier in the Resistance. Moon Bloodgood Bryce Dallas Howard is completely wasted, taking over the CLA. Dan's role as Connor's love interest, while Yelchin was the weak link in Star Trek, a much better cinematic revisiting. He's actually one of the stronger players in Terminator Salvation, in what is turning out to be a rather horrid summer so far for originals course. Danny Elfman disappoints with a mind-numbing, thundering score that is nearly as emotionless as Bale's performance. Shane Hurlbut, the director of photography who captured the wrath of Bale, paints the film in sepia tones that are at first electrifying but quickly become tiresome. As there's little variation by film's end into this bleak, hyper-serious and stoic universe, MCG tosses in a couple nods to the film's history, but the laughs they produce feel almost out of place in film that only brings forth laughter when we force to buy into a romance between Worthington and Bloodgood, scripted by John Bonato and Michael Ferris, who also penned the vastly superior Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. Terminator Salvation is an exercise in cinematic excess for no rhyme nor reason. The machines are on a certain level awesome to behold, but they do little we haven't already seen and seem to disappear as quickly as they arrive. It's clear at film's end that MCG intends Terminator Salvation to revive the series, perhaps much in the way Star Trek has revived that legendary series. Instead, MCG puts the series on life support, with its only hope of revival a return to the screen by Arnold himself. Who would have ever thought I'd be writing a review saying that Arnold Schwarzenegger would be preferable to Christian Bale? More details for the record. I am not a MCG hater, nor am I holding Christian Bale's set meltdown against him. I realize that MCG will be forever haunted by the fact he directed Charlie's Angels. But I had really high hopes for Terminator Salvation. I wanted it to be great. Why did I think that this long-awaited addition to the Terminator movie franchise had even a snowball's chance of being awesome? Because I had the sense that MCG wanted to prove he could do it. While many people think that his film We Are Marshall isn't all that great, I really enjoyed it, and it demonstrated to me that he could actually do a film with characters you could care about. The film opens in 2003 with Marcus Wright, Sam Worthington, in a prison cell on death row. Hours before his execution, he's visited by a scientist who has cancer, Helena Bonham Carter, and wants him to donate his body to science. She seems desperate to get him to sign, and he's not very cordial to her, despite her situation and the first problems in the film surface. Right at the start, why is she so desperate for him in particular to donate his body? Don't scores of people have organ donation cards in their wallets? And then there's his mysterious background. He's responsible for the death of his brother and 2 police officers. Neither of these is ever explained in the film, nor in the prequel novel for that matter, which I did read from there. The film jumps to some serious action-y goodness in 2018. I won't give anything away, other than to say we get to see Christian Bale as John Connor almost immediately, and he's involved on a mission that does no end up going very well at all. Very satisfying first look at the future, including some fantastic action and cool visuals, SL camera angles. The upshot is that the Resistance, not LED at this point by Connor, has found a way to defeat Skynet. Connor volunteers to test it on a small scale before the big move against Skynet Central. However, that plot line becomes secondary to the story of Marcus Wright and his involvement with a young Kyle Reese. Anton Yelchin for the non-fans out there. Reese is the man who was sent back in time to save Sarah Connor and is the father of John Connor. At the point this film takes place, that hasn't happened yet. Does your head hurt yet? Marcus doesn't seem to have aged at all, although 15 years have passed, and there is a mystery surrounding him. He runs into Kyle and the young girl he's taken under his protection, and very grudgingly goes along with them since he doesn't really know what's going on. And Reese to keep him from being killed by AT-600. That's the bigger and bulkier predecessor to the T-800, aka the Schwarzenegger Terminator. The film eventually brings together Wright and Connor via Resistance pilot Bladler. Moon Blood. Good, there's an issue of trust and conflict between the two that becomes the major issue in the film. The action scenes are impressive. I especially like the fact that, as far as I could tell, a fair amount of physical models and props were used in the film. Of course, there was certainly a good amount of CGI, but overall I found it well done, not like the apparently under-rendered effects in Wolverine. I also loved the look of the film, washed out, tones, and a true sense of a world in which the joy has been removed. And what about the variety of Terminators? Personally, I like them. It made sense to me to have a variety of different robots for different tasks, and actually, in view of that, the Terminator model that made the least sense in the film was the T-600. It was too big to be mistaken for a person had rubber skin, and most of the ones we saw didn't even have much of that. I suppose you could say that Skynet was practicing until it got it right with the T-800. In any case, they were intimidating, and it was great to see them functioning in their own element out in the open. I thought Sam. Worthington was one of the best things in the film, but even with him there were problems, which I'll get to shortly. There was one other thing that was great, but I don't want to give away anything else. This movie just didn't have any soul. Beyond Worthington's character, I didn't connect with or really give a damn about anyone in this movie, especially John. Connor, I have no doubt that Christian Bale is a good actor, but he seems to be stuck in permanent Batman mode. Even when he's supposed to be showing emotion, he seems cold and distant, and that Batman rasp in his voice seems to be lingering. I might even venture as far as to say that he was miscast in the role. Think back to Terminator 2, where they did the brief flash forward showing Connor on the battlefield in the future. That was Michael Edwards, if you're wondering. Sure, he looked tough and battle-scarred, but for the brief moment we saw him, he seemed thoughtful, like kind of a brainy guy who had been thrust into the position and had lived with it for a while. Bale just comes across as a badass, and he just didn't work for me. Then there's Marcus Wright. He's the character you'll most likely actually end up caring about, but he's also the character that feels shoehorned into the mythos, and that doesn't belong in the film at all. We never get a clear explanation of his background or the details surrounding how his mystery came to be. In respect to the existing Cyberdyne Skynet technology, what about Anton Yelchin? As Reese, he did a decent enough job, and I was surprised at how I was able to buy him as a teenage Kyle. However, here, there just wasn't enough there for us to get to know him or connect with him. As a matter of fact, through the entire film, it seems like all we get are brief sentences of dialogue from most everyone. There was also Bryce Dallas Howard as Kate Connor, John's wife. She served as no more than window dressing and seemed to be in the film for no other reason than to demonstrate the continuity established in Terminator 3. Oh, and she's pregnant. It's obvious visually, but it's not even really addressed or acknowledged in the film. Try How Do We Raise a Child in a World Like This? Or something, if you're not going to say something significant about it, why bother to have her pregnant at all? If you know how I feel about Transformers, you'll know that I'm not a fan of mashing together juvenile humor and serious action, but in the previous films they managed to fit in a bit of appropriate humor here and there. It's missing from this film completely, just serious and depressing. All the way through, Rapper Common was barely in the film long enough to register any sort of note regarding his performance. But at least we got a little something out of Moonblood. Good. Finally, the film doesn't really resolve anything by the end, sure. I understand keeping things open for sequels, which frankly, I hope at the very least will have different writers. But at the end of the movie, I was left thinking, so what was the point? So if you go in just looking for your typical summer blockbuster action flick, you'll probably enjoy it. But if you're looking for a film that lives up to the first two, I think you're going to be disappointed by Terminator Salvation having waited a long time for the arrival of Terminator Salvation. I was expecting to be very disappointed. The rumors and conjectures surrounding the movie were a smidge bit ominous. Weren't they so trundling nervously into the dark in theater I was tasting a fair dollop of deflation before the previews even began to roll? Many people have compared this movie unfavorably to T3RM. I disagree, though there are more than a few potholes, marring the landscape en route to Skynet. This movie didn't add to the wounds the scars left by the previous installment, were untouched by this newest addition to the Cyborg Saga. Cyborg Saga MCG has something to be sheepish about. One worry with T4 was the announcement of Mr. McGinty to direct the possible savior of the cult franchise. He actually didn't do too bad a job of directing this movie. It's just not a Terminator movie, though. It does indeed make all the right noises, if not pitch perfect, as feverishly awaited by fans. The casting was promising. Christian Bale aimed for that lovely air of *CK, I have to save mankind, which Edward Furlong gave us in T2. And Nick Stahl tried valiantly to refresh in T3, perhaps mirrored in T4 by Christian Bale's Millstone, the need to save something, but with a massive weight of responsibility, which begs you to empty your pockets and walk away. Sharpish. Okay, so they're in a war, and in a situation like that, a proper introduction isn't always possible or necessary. But bloody hell, give me a minute to pause and absorb the last piece of information before more carnage. Yes, the writers need to be swiftly removed, no offense to them, but please stop screwing with Terminator. Did you not learn from Artyom? Stop it. Damn you, where was I? The love scene between Marcus Wright and Blair Williams should have been left in come the end of the film. I didn't feel that romantic connection between Marcus and Blair, as I might have done had I seen some emotion between them. The intimacy was needed. Same with John and Kate. Their married baby on the way, and they barely touch when John came back from losing all his men to Skynet. She should have kissed the man. Thank God you're alive. Instead, it was more like, good day, darling. We already knew that Braun and Ferris weren't that great with emotion. I mean, T3 was hardly zinging with sexual tension. Was it you're talking about humanity, love, hate, sadness? Mr. Bale managed to emote a flash of guilt with the loss of his men. So where did the rest of the human response go, Moons? Character could have been a strong, festy woman, but she wasn't. All of her fights seemed to vanish in the midst the second. Marcus was around Anton Yelchin, should have fit the part of Kyle Ree pretty well. A bit more cocky bravado and fighting tooth and nail definitely would have fleshed out the character a lot more, which would have been enough of a glimpse of the transition between the boy and the man to keep us intrigued. Sam Worthington was at least half believable in Salvation. I know it's not the done thing, but I think his role should have been longer, not shorter. The ending didn't really gel with the rest of the plot. Pardon me, but I liked the idea for the character. I'll briefly skim over. Barnes Common, there isn't much to say, is there? The character barely existed on the screen. So yeah, he came across as cardboard. Can he seriously be blamed? I'm not sure. Arnold Girlish screamed the CGI was cartoonish and almost brutishly thrown in for extra measure, adding little to the experience. But the knowledge that Arnold didn't care to be present himself. The new Terminators were an interesting concept, and if used properly, would have added to the story and transition of Skynet. But there should have been more. I wanted more infantry, more threat of attack from the foot soldiers, Could you imagine seeing an army of T-600 marching toward you with their dead eyes and that buzzing sound? It would be freaking awesome. Extra information for 25 years fans have. For 25 years fans have waited to see the future war between man and machine hinted at in the Terminator and Terminator 2. Judgment Day ragtag groups of humans scratching out dirty, hard-scrabble post-apocalyptic lives as they are engaged in a relentless war with deadly robot endoskeletons. This is the kind of thing that excites 13-year-old boys and the 13-year-old boy living inside every grown-up moviegoer. And while Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines brought the series to the point we'd all been waiting for, Judgment Day was here. Nuclear fire rained down on humanity. Skynet was in control. It took 2 hours of rehashing to get there. Now comes Terminator Salvation. It's the future. War. It's the years after Judgment Day, when the cities of man have fallen and the machines scour the landscape, killing and harvesting humans. It's the movie we've been waiting for. But it's also a movie coming in this modern age where franchise follow-ups seem to yield only disappointment. It's the post-prequel world. And audiences are ready to settle for less, especially when they realize Terminator Salvation comes from MCG, the oar behind the silly Charlie Angels films and the singly sentimental We Are Marshall, a man who lacks the common decency to have a complete name. So perhaps the greatest surprise doesn't come in the form of plot twists, but from the fact that the movie is pretty damn good. Let's not be foolish. It doesn't hold a candle to the first 2 James Cameron films, but it wipes the floor. With Terminator 3 as a movie all on its own, not compared to the prior entries, it works very well. Part of what makes Terminator Salvation work is that it's unafraid to be its own entity, while the film shoehorns in the usual catchphrases, "I'll be back" and "Come with me if you want to live" are both DU to F. Trotted out, it is used the standard squell architecture of being nothing more than a remake of the previous film MG's film, boldly moves forward. Gone is the standard chase structure of the Terminator franchise, replaced here with Men on a Mission. Adventure Gone is John Connor as a hapless dork, reliant on a benevolent robot buddy, replaced by a glowering John Connor played by the best glower of his generation, Christian Bale. Gone is the LA of the late 20th, early 21st century, replaced with underground bunkers and robot factory cities for a summer blockbuster. Terminator Salvation is bursting with plot and incident. Much of it even makes sense. The film is propulsive, barely stopping for breath. There are exciting chases, suspenseful close calls, edge-of-your-seat battles, and adrenaline-charged set pieces. Egg's movie doesn't just serve up a monotonous series of humans versus endoskeleton scenes. There's an array of cyborgs in action, ranging from snake-like Hydrobot to motorcycle Terminators that drive themselves to huge, seemingly steam-powered robots that grab humans by the handful and then pilot harvester ships away. There are hunter-killer ships and ghoulish T-600 hulking endoskeletons, wearing creepy Halloween masks over glowing red eyes. It's not so much an actioner as we've come to understand the term. Rather, it's an adventure movie filled with abyss-defying escapes and daring heroics. Mick G has made much of how dark his movie is, and it does touch on issues of humanity and despair, but throughout the pre-release hype, he's undersold just how much fun his movie is. As a director, he knows enough to get good actors and step out of their way. Christian Bale does exactly what you'd want Christian Bale to do as a battle-hardened Connor. Sam Worthington, meanwhile, struggles with his American accent as Marcus Wright, the man out of time, but otherwise makes a solid, if stolid, hero. With lead roles in Avatar and Clash of the Titans to come, Hollywood seems to have decided that Worthington is the next big thing. But while he has the looks and chops of a big-screen hero, he's perhaps missing some of the warmth and charisma that goes with it. Perhaps there's time for him to develop it, lacking neither warmth nor charisma. Is Anton Yelchin as the young Kyle? Yelchin is the film's secret weapon. While he may seem too scrawny, too young, and too soft for the role, he's actually perfect. His Kyle is a young man on the verge, and we can see the hints of Michael Biehn in him. Yelchin, in just a few scenes, goes from a smart but scared kid to a leader of men in desperate times, and he does it without glowering, frowning, or growling. You believe every moment of it equally good is the gorgeous Moonblood good. Like Yelchin, she's not given enough screen time, but she makes the best of handful of scenes. Her character has the widest arc and the least time to sell it, but she nails the role of a tough combat pilot whose humanity peeks through Majig's. Other strong suit is the action-mixing practical effects with CGI he creates, immersive and thrilling moments of danger and fun from Moto Terminators, giving chase to our heroes to a final fight with a familiar face in the Terminator factory. McG borrows from the styles of his peers to make something that breaks few barriers but works well on a visceral level. Some have worried that the film which is appealing, the softer rating would be a kiddie picture. The truth is that the nature of the action man against robot means he can wreak all manner of havoc on the bad guys without needing to shed a drop of blood. No. Punches are pulled and the action is satisfyingly loud and explodey up ahead. Of steam, it ends not satisfyingly, not dramatically, and not in a cliffhanger fashion. It just feels like they've run out of film and must wrap it all up in 4 quick minutes. Terminator Salvation is supposed to herald the start of a new trilogy, but the end of this one feels quite finished. Time travel is yet to happen, but the film hasn't left enough open ends to make a sequel automatically compelling. It seems a strange critique. Of a film, it's too standalone. But this world, which had been marvelously opened in the previous 110 minutes, feels abruptly closed in the final 5. Terminator Salvation is a relaunch of the film franchise featuring Christian Bale's gravitas, amazing set pieces, and slick camera work. The video game version has none of these things. Christian Bale has been replaced by a nondescript actor. The action is fairly tame throughout, and the cutscenes are stunningly ordinary, and yet, despite the poor presentation, there are some clever gameplay elements that make Terminator enjoyable. Too bad that joy only lasts a handful of hours before the credits roll. Taking place 2 years prior to the upcoming film, Terminator Salvation follows one day in the life of would-be savior of mankind, John Connor Los. Angeles has been lost to the machines, and the Resistance is pulling back to regroup, but some of Connor's men have gotten themselves captured by Skynet, while the leaders of the Resistance, Connor is still an up-and-coming punk, are willing to sacrifice the few for the good of the many. Connor goes rogue to save his buddies. And that is the entire plot of Terminator Salvation. There are no unexpected twists or insight into John Connor or the formation of the Resistance. It's just an excuse to go from point A to B and fight many machines along the way. Not exactly the worst idea for a game, but it's certainly not very deep. Terminator Salvation seems, ironically enough, a victim of time. They just wasn't enough to create a full game. There are a few moments that lack any cinematic punch. For example, early on, you battle an HK big flying ship from inside the ruins of a building. When you finally shoot it down, you're told it's crashing into the building, but there's no cutscene that shows this awesome moment, and nothing visually spectacular happens in-game. It's a dud, and many more moments like this fall flat throughout the 4-hour adventure. Simply put, the presentation is shockingly poor. Bad. Acting ugly cutscenes, no Christian Bale, and a few story elements that are outright hilarious, the best and worst. Moments in Terminator Salvation are intertwined. The one shining cutscene and coolest gameplay segment is when the massive harvester machine comes around scooping up humans. As I ran from this metal beast, I thought, damn, I can't wait to fight that thing later on. That leads to the worst moment in Terminator Salvation. Towards the end, one of your teammates warns the harvester is still out there. Connor says not to worry, he'll handle it. The next scene shows Connor underneath a snoozing harvester. With a few turns of a monkey wrench, the harvester is now yours to command W. Though there are definitely some rough elements to Terminator Salvation, the future isn't completely bleak. The game play is smartly crafted and often quite engaging. Salvation is a third-person cover shooter with skirmishes taking place in impromptu arenas throughout the ruins of La. Instead of worrying about progressing from cover to cover, moving from the back to the front, fights take place in 360 degrees. The machines are heavily armored, and for most you need to flank them to get at their weak spots. That's only possible by creating combat zones in the round, aiding. This cover system is a radial menu that highlights a half dozen angles you can take for cover. It's a great system and the one stand out in an otherwise H-hum movie licensed game, The enemy AI is tough, and I have to say follows a logical attack pattern. The T-600 humanoid Terminators go straight at you. They don't care about cover or flanking or protecting themselves. They just walk forward and fire. The Spider is the most cautious, constantly realigning itself to keep its near-impervious front side towards its attackers. Sometimes the Spider is too good and too defensive, making it difficult to pull off flanking. Maneuvers, it seems, more focused on you than your AI partners. This often turns you into the bait, leading the Spider to turn its back on your AI allies so they can destroy it. But your AI pals are sometimes total idiots and won't always take advantage of these moments. Things are much better if you play cooperatively with a friend. Best if both of you use Xbox 360 controllers. As long as your friend isn't an idiot, you'll have an easier time getting to the weak side of the machines. The bad news is that there is no online co-op. It's split screen only. Like I said, this is a game that just didn't have enough time to be fully fleshed out if you're on the fence about Terminator Salvation. And I think it's decent enough to be so know that this is a very short game. I beat it in under 4 hours. There is no exploration, no items to collect, no achievements on PC that should pretty much push you over to one side of that fence. The future isn't set. That means you still have time to cancel your pre-order of Terminator Salvation. A harsh statement, certainly. But considering the latest in the Man vs. Machine saga can easily be completed in 4 hours, it's an accurate one. While Terminator Salvation has some good ideas and is fun at times, it lacks any replayability, and more importantly, it lacks the star of the film, which is a rather curious omission. Unfortunately, this isn't a Games for Windows title, so no achievements can be earned, and that's the real draw of a game like Salvation. This film, written by John Brancato, Michael Ferris, produced by Derek Anderson Moritz, Borman Victor Kubicek, Jeffrey Silver starring Christian Bale, Sam Worthington, Anton Yin, Moon Bloodgood, Bryce Dallas Howard, Common Jane, Alexander Helena Bonham Carter, cinematography, Shane HBA, edited by Conrad Buff, music by Danny Mann, production companies, The Halcyon Company, Wonderland Sound and Vision, distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures United. States in Canada, Columbia Pictures through Sony Pictures, releasing international release date May 21st, 2009, running time 117 minutes. Country, United States, language English, budget $200 million, box office $371 million. So guys, this is the review of Terminator Salvation movie and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.